This video is going to have a look at decimals, and in particular rounding decimals and multiplying and dividing decimals. So to round a decimal, what we need to do is we underline the value that we are wanting to round. We then look to the number to the right of it, and if that number is less than 5, then the underlined value will not change, but the remaining values to the right will be removed. If it is greater than or equal to 5, then the underlined value will increase by 1, and the remaining values to the right will be removed. To multiply and divide decimals, the first thing we do is we convert our decimals to a fraction. To convert to a fraction, what we do is we determine the denominator by using the number of place values. So if there's 1 decimal place, the denominator will be 10. 3 decimal places, denominator will be 1,000, and so forth. The numerator is the original decimal multiplied by the denominator. We then perform the operation before converting back to a decimal. Our success criteria, we'll know that we've been successful if you can round decimals to a specified number of places, you can multiply and divide decimals, and you can investigate and calculate best buys. Our life link, so decimal calculations can be used to determine best buys. In Australian supermarkets, most products are required to display unit pricing. This allows people to determine which product is the best value. Unit pricing was introduced in 2009, and prior to this, customers had to perform their own calculations. Okay, our worked example. So worked example 1. We've got 0.1 times 0.3. So if I want to change this to a fraction, I've got 1 decimal place, so my denominator will be 10, and my numerator will be 1. Again, for my second value, 0.3, my denominator is 10, and 0.3 times 10 is 3. I've then got fractions, so to multiply fractions, we multiply across the numerator and across the denominator. So 3 times 1 is 3, 10 times 10 is 100. And then to write that as a decimal, we've got 3 divided by 100, so that is going to be 0.03 as my solution. Example B, we've got 0.4, so that is 4 tenths. And then our second value here is 0.25, that's got 2 decimal places, so my denominator will be 100, so that's 25 over 100. So 4 times 25 is 100. 10 times 100 is 1,000. You can cancel out your zeros. So we've got 1 tenth. So 1 tenth as a decimal is 0.1. Okay, for C, our denominator will be 1,000. Sorry, will be 100 because it's got 2 decimal places. And 10. We then perform our multiplication, so across the numerator, across the denominator. So 5 times 2 is 10, 100 times 10 is 1,000. We cancel out zeros, so we've got 1 100th, so it'll be 0.01 as our solution. We then have 15 out of 100 times 5 over 100. Go across the numerator, across the denominator. So we've now got 75 over 10,000. So if I've got 75, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. Sorry. So if my decimal is at the back here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So my solution is going to be 0.0075. Okay, example number 2. We have 9 divided by 0.3. So again, we're going to make them fractions. So 9 will be 9 over 1 divided by, we've got 1 decimal place, so our denominator is 10, so it's 3 tenths. To divide fractions, we switch and flip. So you're going to have 9 over 1 times 10 over 3. We then multiply numerators, multiply our denominators. So we're going to have 90 over 3, which is 30. Okay, our second one here, we've got 0.4 over 0.1. So remember, if it's written in fraction form, that also means division. So 0.4 as a fraction is 4 tenths. Divided by 0.1 as a fraction is 1 tenth. So again, it's a fraction, so we're going to switch and flip. So we've got 4 tenths times 10 over 1. Our multiplication, we multiply the numerator, multiply the denominators. So you're going to have 40 over 10. So our solution here is 4. For C, we've got 0.25. So that's going to be 25 over 100 divided by 0.5, which is 5/10. We switch and flip. So you're going to have 25 over 100 times 10 over 5. So 25 times 10 is 250. 100 times 5 is 500. So 250 goes into each of them. So that simplifies to a half, which we can write as 0.5. Now next one, we've got 5 over 10 divided by 15 over 100. So we want to switch and flip. So we've got 5/10 times 100/15. We go across the numerator, across the denominator. So we end up with 500 over 150. What we then want to do is we want to see, okay, well, what goes into each of them? Well, I know 50 is going to go into both of them. So 50 into 500 is 10. 50 into 150 is 3. If I then want to get back to a decimal, I need to complete that calculation. So 10 divided by 3 is 3.33 recurring. Okay. And our last couple of examples are rounding our decimals. So we want to round to 2 decimal places for this first one. So what we're going to do, if we want to round to 2 decimal places, we underline that second decimal place. I am then having a look at the number directly to the right. If that number is greater than 5, which it is, it's 8, that means that we add 1 to the 4. So we're going to have 0.05, and then the rest of the numbers are taken out so that we're rounded to 2 decimal places. Our next one, we want to round to 1 decimal place. So I'm having a look at that first decimal place. I'm circling the number straight to the right of it. Now 4 is less than 5, so that doesn't change the value. So here our solution is going to be 0.0. Our next one, we underline. We want to round to 2 decimal places. We circle 1 to the right of it. 2 is not going to change it, so our solution is 0.39. 1 decimal place, so we underline the first decimal place, circle the number to the right of it. That's greater than 5, so we add 1, so it's going to be 0.4. Okay, in example 4, again, we're rounding our decimals. So our second decimal place here is 9. That means that we're going to be looking at the 2. Therefore, it is 1.89. Our first decimal place is 8. 1 value to the right is the 9. That is going to cause us to go up, so it's going to be 1.9. Our second decimal place here is a 2. The number to the right is a 3, so our value is going to be 0.32. And then our final example, we've got 0.323. So our first decimal place is a 3. The number we're looking at is a 2, so that's going to stay as 0.3.